Hello. Things you never thought you'd hear. Business lauding Jeremy Corbyn. Yes, suddenly the CBI can see merit in the man. Now he's firmly committed himself to backing a significantly softer form of Brexit. It's one measure of just how game-changing his move could be, potentially turning politics upside down. If that sounds like an exaggeration, let me be clear, it may turn out not to have any effect at all. It is all going to hinge on the next few weeks and whether Mr Corbyn can muster a majority in favour of his new pro-customs union stance. Now, if he can, the whole Brexit negotiation will change. But here's the thing, it is Tory rebels who now really decide whether we go for the softer Brexit or not. They have to decide whether to vote with Jeremy Corbyn or Theresa May. And they'll be less likely to go with Mr Corbyn if they think it'll make him Prime Minister. Well, we're in for some interesting times. Nick Watt was in Coventry to watch the Labour leader set out his new approach.
It is a British icon which has always had a special, if not always welcome place in Europe. And today, Jeremy Corbyn used the example of the modern Mini to illustrate the need for the UK to establish what he called a new, comprehensive customs union with the EU. The Mini, or at least parts of it, crosses the channel 3 times before it rolls off the production line. This highlights the need to maintain what Mr Corbyn described as a frictionless, interwoven supply chain.
We've long argued that a customs union is a viable option for the final deal. So Labour would seek to negotiate a new, comprehensive UK-EU customs union to ensure there are no tariffs with Europe and to help avoid any need whatsoever for a hard border in Northern Ireland.
A customs union with the EU would allow the UK to participate in core elements of the customs union. These are guaranteed tariff-free trade on goods with the EU, minimal customs checks with the EU, and levying the EU's common external tariff on goods from outside the EU. The Labour leader addressed the central reason why Theresa May is rejecting both a customs union and the customs union. That is the need for the UK to be able to negotiate its own trade deals beyond the EU. He would set as a condition for his proposed new customs union a definitive UK say in future EU trade deals.
A new customs arrangement would depend on Britain being able to negotiate agreement for new trade deals in our national interest. Labour would not countenance a deal that left Britain as a passive recipient of rules decided elsewhere by others that would mean ending up as a mere rule taker.
It was no mistake that Jeremy Corbyn chose Coventry, which voted leave. He wanted to show that he intends to abide by the letter and the spirit of Brexit by negotiating a bespoke relationship with the EU.
Today's speech was the culmination of painstaking negotiations within the shadow cabinet. Jeremy Corbyn has historically been wary of the EU, which he criticised today for embedding free market orthodoxy. But there are more enthusiastic supporters of the EU in the shadow cabinet, and they were delighted when the Labour leader also talked about forging a close relationship with the single market. I spoke to one ally of Jeremy Corbyn who said it's right that he's taken time to adapt his position. This person said to me, why let the Blairite agitators claim the credit for this? And also, why not let the Tories suffer a little longer on Brexit?
And of course,
one veteran Labour Eurosceptic welcomed Jeremy Corbyn's intervention in light of his pledge to shape future trade deals to help poorer countries.
Jeremy knows that this is a game changer for Europe, not for him, and he will set out this position and he will then show that here's somebody more sceptical than me about the European Union, who's tried his level best to get an agreement off them, and what have they done? They're going to, I would have thought, tell him to run and jump. But he will have shown the country that he was serious in trying to negotiate. And he'll get credit for that.
The icon of the left cited an icon of Britain's motoring history to inject new movement into the Brexit process. Theresa May will respond on Friday, but her fragile hold over Parliament means that the leader of the opposition may well have a role in shaping the outcome.
Nick, what there? In a moment, we'll hear from one of Labour's front bench and a leading Tory. But first, Nick is with me now, and our business editor, Helen Thomas, to reflect on this. And I'm particularly interested in looking at whether Labour's support for the customs union membership means, A, it might happen, and B, what that means for the government, as it is possible to visualise some pretty dramatic consequences of all of this. So, Nick, let's go through this. How do MPs get to exert a vote on the customs union from this point?
Well, there's three ways in which a customs union could be put into law. In the first place, Jeremy Corbyn will table amendment to the trade bill calling for a customs union. Highly unlikely to see that going through, because I do not envisage Tory rebels voting for that. So the second option is this cross-party amendment that will be tabled by Anna Soubry for the Tories and Chuka Umunna for Labour. Now, we had a precedent in December where the Tory rebels did defeat the government, so that could go through. The other option is the separate EU withdrawal bill that is currently in the House of Lords. You will find that peers will try to amend that bill to put in a customs union, and the thing for the government is they would then have to get the numbers in the Commons to overturn that.
Right. Now, let's go through the maths here. There are three key numbers, which you're going to tell me. There's the government's working majority with the DUP. There's the number of Labour rebels who will support the government on Brexit, the Kate Hoeys, who add to that majority. And then you can calculate how many Tory rebels there need to be to make customs union happen. So let's go through those numbers.
Well, at the risk of trying to outbid you, Evan, of all people on numbers, those numbers are that the government's effective working majority with the help of the DUP in the House of Commons is 13.
1-3.
It's widely assumed that there are about 7 Labour Brexit rebels. In other words, they will vote down the line with the government on Brexit, which effectively then gives the government a majority of 27.
You have to double the 7 because otherwise...
Now, what that means is that you then need 14 Tory rebels to overturn that, although when the government was defeated in December on that Dominic Grieve amendment on a future vote, he managed to muster 12 Conservative MPs.
Right, so it's very finely balanced. Now, one of the techniques we've heard that the government may adopt is to say, hey, this isn't just, you're not just voting on customs union, you're voting on the future of the government, a confidence motion. And now, does that work?
Well, it's no to John Major in 1993. He was in trouble on the Maastricht Treaty, crucial vote. So what he did was he tacked a no confidence motion onto that vote, and he saw it through. You cannot do that now, because the only no confidence vote you can have is strictly prescribed by the Fixed Term Parliament Act, and the wording in that motion has to be that this House has no confidence in Her Majesty's government.
So you can't bundle it all together.
You can't do that. But what you could do is yes to John Major in 1995, when he challenged his party and said, back me or sack me.
I'll resign if you don't do what I say.
He resigned as Conservative leader. And you could see Theresa May saying to the Conservative rebels, thinking of backing perhaps the Soubry Amendment, watch out, you would enable Jeremy Corbyn. If you do that, I will trigger a contest.
Yeah. Wow, the politics is very interesting. Helen, I mean, actually, the politics is where a lot of the actions are going to be for the next few months. But it was interesting to watch business coming out and sort of...
It was quite positive, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So the CBI welcomed this, called it a real-world solution. Aerospace and defence, big industry body also welcomed this. It wasn't universal, actually. So British Chambers of Commerce basically dismissed this as all politics. And there was an acknowledgement, actually, that this sort of alliance of big business with the Labour Party was feeling a little odd. So the CBI had this warning about businesses have their eyes wide open on Labour's overall rhetoric on renationalisation. Remember, some of the things Labour's asking for here about clarifications to state aid, competition rules, privatisation and so on, reflect domestic policies that business isn't so keen on.
Cherry-picking from the EU the bits that they think they wouldn't be allowed to do, but they'd like to. In terms of the practical differences now, we've sort of got customs union versus no customs union.
Well,
how big a deal?
So everybody says they want trade to be as frictionless as possible. It's a question of how you think you're going to achieve that and how realistic that plan is. Now, so the government wants to be able to strike its own trade deals, and it wants to rely on managed divergence, so more divergence in some areas than others, to stay as close as possible to the EU to allow it to get a favourable trade deal. Now, is that cherry picking? Certainly the response from the EU seems to suggest that they think it might be. Is Labour cherry picking too? We've got those changes they want to make to state aid rules and so on. Elsewhere, they talked about, you know, having a say in trade deals in the national interest, but they seem to be talking about having a say in future EU trade deals as part of some kind of bloc, not striking out on their own. When it comes to regulation, the Labour position's quite interesting. I spoke to one person tonight who said that they thought this at least left the door open to staying in the single market for goods only.
That's interesting.
So total alignment on rules and regulations for goods. That
sort of half in the single market for half the... Yeah.
And that, of course, basically solves your problem in Ireland. The hit is what happens to services, crucial to the UK economy and, of course, the city.
Nick, in 2 sentences, is it possible there are people in government who rather want the MPs to vote us into a customs union because they want to be in a customs union?
That is indeed the case. There are some Remain ministers who are hoping that Parliament will do the heavy lifting. I spoke to somebody not a million miles away from a Remain cabinet minister who says, we're hoping that Parliament will do our work for us.
Thank you both very much indeed. Well, we did ask the government if they wanted to come on tonight, but they weren't particularly interested. However, the 2 really important groups today are the Labour Party and the Tory Rebels, and we have them both represented in the studio. We're joined by Barry Gardiner, the Shadow International Trade Secretary, and the Conservative MP, Sarah Wollaston. Very good evening to you both. I'm going to start with you, Barry Gardiner. Some think this is just politicking by the Labour Party, playing games in Parliament. Is it that, or is this a principled decision by the party?
No, look, I think Helen was absolutely right in singling out the words of the CBI and business. This decision has been taken because we think it is resolving the uncertainty that has been hanging over British business for the past 20 months. And people have been saying, look, we need to know what's happening with our supply chains. We need to know what is going to happen in terms of any tariffs or quotas that may arise between us and the other 27 countries. And what we're trying to do is really to bring some innovative thinking here and say, look, this is, if we were in government, and we're not, we accept that, we know we're not in government at the moment, but if we were, this is how we would want to conduct the negotiations.
But you know very well that may come to prevail because there may be a vote in Parliament and you indeed have asked for a vote in Parliament.
It would provide 2 solutions, one to the issue that businesses face and the other a good step towards solving the Irish problem.
Let's just push on though, because I'm really interested. If, let's suppose you get the votes as you want in Parliament to insist on Britain staying in a customs union, is it your position that Theresa May can stay in government, stay as Prime Minister to deliver the Brexit she says she doesn't want to deliver?
Evan, of course, I would love to see the government
Of course you would, because you're in opposition.
Of course.
But is it your position that you don't say she has to resign as a result of defeat on that vote?
Look, this is not in our gift, as you well know. We cannot force the sitting Prime Minister to resign. The only people that can do that, as I understand it, are the 1922 committee, or she herself could take that decision, or it would have to go to the vote that says, you know, it's a no confidence
Act.
Exactly.
So I just want to be clear. So if she loses that vote, because I think Tory rebels may be interested in this, if she loses the vote, are you going to say, we need an election, we need a confidence vote, get out of office, it's time for Jeremy Corbyn to become Prime Minister? Or will you say, there we are, now Theresa May, just carry on as you carry on most days?
Look, I think the real debate here will actually be in the Conservative Party.
Right.
And
but you're not going to call for it. Because, of course, the Tory rebels are not going to join you if they think this is about getting Jeremy Corbyn in number 10. But they will if it's about a customs union.
But that's why it's really important to understand that whatever we say the day after any vote does not actually change the facts on the ground, that this is not in our gift, it's in theirs.
Very interesting you're saying that, because that does sound to me like you're wooing Tory rebels by trying to say it's not about getting Theresa May out.
Let me say that the people that I'm interested in here are not the Tory rebels. It's actually the people out there who are in jobs that are dependent on these industries and that need to know that they're going to have jobs in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, and that's what the move that Jeremy's made today is going to facilitate.
Right. Now, you said something really interesting in the first, and it's the phrase you've used all day, that this is a step towards solving the problem of the Irish border. It does not solve the Irish border problem, does it?
Absolutely.
However, Britain has committed to something that will solve the Irish border in the joint report that is being written up as a withdrawal agreement. And we have signed up to alignment of all relative regulation or relevant regulations that would, be necessary for a border to be open. Are you signed up to that?
Look, I think there is a really difficult problem with the Irish border, and I think it's going to involve compromise on both sides, from us and from
it's all been agreed. We've signed. Britain has signed a joint report.
The government.
It's a withdrawal agreement. Are you saying you would renounce what they signed?
No, look. But don't try and bind us by what an incompetent Prime Minister has done.
Hang on.
To try and make sure that she can square the circle within her own cabinet.
But what are the Europeans going to think? Are they going to? Are you basically saying you don't stand by the agreement that was reached in December?
No,
okay. You are standing by it, or you are, or you're not. I mean, you can't have it both ways.
Well, actually, I can dispute the premise of the question. Jeremy set out today Labour's position, and that is that we want to honour the Good Friday Agreement. We think it's absolutely fundamental that we have the border without infrastructure.
Well, everybody says
Ireland.
all of this, but basically we've reached an agreement that says there will be alignment between the UK and the EU on product regulation if it's necessary for no border. And you are in agreement with that. You're not renouncing the agreement that Britain made in December. So in effect, we are half in the single market as a result of that, aren't we?
And actually, we're not the government. We're not conducting these negotiations.
No. But it would be interesting. They'd love to know what you would do if you were. You're telling us some other bits of what you do.
Well, and I think what you've got to do is you've got to see how the whole political situation evolves, and with that we will try and always, as we've done today, keep one step ahead of the government, but do it in line with the principles that we set out in our manifesto, that we recognise the benefits of both the single market and the customs union.
You've been uncharacteristically sort of reticent about spelling it out, but we get the point. Barry Gardiner, thank you very much. Sarah Wollaston, now you are a supporter of a customs union of some kind.
That's right.
Why is that?
A customs union, even if that is a partial customs union, and it's about avoiding the serious unintended consequences of a no-deal, walk-away Brexit. It's not about trying to force the Theresa May to resign. Of course, I don't want to see that. But in some ways, I do think it may help her, because she will then be able to turn around to the 62 who are sort of threatening to sort of force her into a leadership contest. It will enable her to explain the reality. And the simple reality is this, that there isn't a parliamentary majority for a hard Brexit. And it allows her to go back to them, maybe say, love to help.
I've done my best, guys.
I've done my best, exactly.
What can I do?
It is absolutely clear that the unintended consequences are very, very serious for business, the problem around Northern Ireland.
Just on the parliamentary arithmetic, given a free vote, what would